Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be reading from episode 2 of Fated Mates of the Drakoan. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Danielle Forrest and I'm an alien romance author. On this channel I do videos about myself, my writing, and anything related to those topics. Today in episode 2, Davin and his team are going to be going down to Earth and finding out what's really going on. Maybe. Alright, now into the episode. Davin tried to keep a neutral expression as he entered the shuttle bay. Head tall, shoulders back, exude confidence. He was a leader, a commander. The team he'd chosen might have been his closest friends, but they were also his subordinates. He could never forget that, and it meant constantly balancing how he felt personally against the needs of his position. Sometimes he wondered if it was worth it. Van stood by the shuttle, a small smile on his face as he oversaw the team. Other teams were also rushing around the shuttle bay, preparing for their own missions. Each of the ships in his fleet would have had a similar scene playing out in their own shuttle bays. Coordinating with the human captain, they'd settled on a plan to regain communication with Earth. His teams would send down shuttles to the planet's surface to each of the most influential governing centers, and re-establish communication while the human crews would work up here in space to repair and replace the technology that had been damaged or destroyed. Hopefully, between their combined efforts, they could find some semblance of normalcy again. At least they probably didn't have to worry about the enemy. He still wasn't entirely sure what species had attacked the Earth forces in the first place, but when their systems had come back online, there had been nothing left of them. The bombs had done their jobs thoroughly. The Earth's last-ditch effort to save itself had worked, but it come at a great cost. As yet, they didn't know how great. His team continued flitting in and out of the shuttle, preparing it for their mission. Status, he said as he came up beside Van. Almost ready, Commander. He nodded. Anything else from the venture? No, Commander, but I have the CEO tasked with relaying any calls through the shuttle to our comms. He tapped his bracer as he spoke. The bracer was the most high-tech gadget any of them generally kept on their persons. Civilian versions were smaller, less than half as wide, but for the military it covered most of the forearm. It was their comms, their mission computer, their everything. All set, Commander, a deep feminine voice barked from the back of the shuttle. Her deep green scales shimmered in the overhead lighting. Excellent. Let's get started. The team quickly stomped up the ramp, which started closing behind them. Davin continued forward, slipping quickly through the gear room at the back of the shuttle and into the main hallway. He passed by the bunk rooms on either side and a tiny med bay on the right before entering the bridge. It was much smaller than the ship's bridge, with only enough seats for the 6 of them. Their pilot was already in his seat, his hands touching screens, buttons, and switches as he prepared for launch. The only woman on the team plopped down beside him, opening up the communications display. The rest of them settled into the 4 remaining seats, securing themselves in their harnesses with practiced ease. Unsurprisingly, their chatty, if blunt, CO immediately turned around in her seat and started talking. So what names did everyone pick? I picked Grace. Someone in the room snorted. Grace turned, glaring at their tech officer. I picked Heath, his pilot said. Ever the peacekeeper, trying, as always, to distract Grace before all hell broke loose. Lane, their quiet weapons officer said. Van. Their TA snorted again, shaking his head. What's so funny? Grace snapped, losing her cool as the engines roared to life. Davin frowned. Grace should have been communicating with the shuttle bay crew, informing them they were ready for launch. Instead, she was shooting daggers at their TO with her eyes. You all picked like objects and shit, he said, snorting again. She renewed her glare, looking like she was about to release her harness and tackle him, which wouldn't end well. While their TO was much larger than her, she had a tendency to fight dirty, and wasn't averse to using her claws when she felt like it. And what did you pick? Their TA puffed up a little before speaking. Eric. A nice normal human name. Grace rolled her eyes, but finally turned back around and opened a calm line. Sitting next to him, Van looked over at Davin, shaking his head like a long-suffering parent dealing with a recalcitrant child. Conversely, Davin smiled, struggling with the urge to laugh. As a commander, he had to be apart, but he savored moments like this, even when he couldn't participate anymore. He remembered how he used to joke around with his cohorts. There was something special about relationships in the military, a closeness and bond you couldn't experience anywhere else. He kind of missed it. These people were his closest friends, but other than Van, he couldn't really express himself the way he wished. He would love to join in on their banter, but it wouldn't be professional. He let out a quiet sigh as the bay doors began opening before them. The shuttle lifted off and they blasted forward, the inertia pushing Davin into his seat. In mere moments, the front shield grew red with the heat of entry, and he gripped his seat as a part of him thrilled at the ride. Her job done, Grace tilted her head back and said, "So what did you choose, Commander?" "Davin," he said, as the red began to fade and the details of the planet's surface came into view. From here, everything looked oddly flat. He could just barely make out land masses and bodies of water with clouds still marring the view, but little else. She nodded, pausing only briefly before opening her mouth again. "So what do you guys know about humans?" There was a moment of silence before anyone said anything. The topic changed both jarring and wholly expected from Grace at this point. "Probably as much as you," Heath said, elbowing her from the pilot's seat with an irreverent grin plastered on his face. "I bet as soon as you found out about this mission to Earth, you started researching their mating practices." "Shut up, you tail licker," she said with a frown as she punched him in the arm. He only laughed, ignoring her punch as he continued piloting the shuttle. After mumbling something under her breath, she slouched in her seat and crossed her arms. "So what if I want to get mated someday? Is that so wrong?" "At least I'm not a hypocrite about it," she said, turning around to glare at the rest of the team accusingly. "You all are just too cowardly to admit it." The fact that no one balked at being called a coward was an answer enough. Mating was an odd quirk of their biology, an urge that, until modern medicine, was uncontrollable, stealing a Drakoan's sanity, practically devolving them into animals. It was archaic, and most of their society frowned on it, even though it was rare in the first place. And yet still, some like Grace yearned for it. Many called it just biology, but for some it was romantic, like fate touching two people and nudging them together. Davin personally had never really thought about it. Between his family and his career, he had little time to find a partner, let alone long for a mate. Not that he needed one. Who had time for that when you had parents, grandparents, siblings, cousins, nieces, and nephews all living under the same roof? Sometimes it felt like he'd joined the military just to get some much-needed peace and quiet. "Approaching our landing vector," Heath said, jarring Davin out of his thoughts. He looked up, surprised to realize they were almost there. But that wasn't the only thing that surprised him. The plan had been to initially touch down just outside of Washington, D.C., then travel to New York City when they were done there. The two cities were relatively close together, and both were significant on the global scale, one being the seat of the government of the United States of America, and the other being the location of the United Nations headquarters. Both were important targets for re-establishing contact. And yet, as he looked out the front shield, he was shocked by what he saw. They were flying over a city of some sort, but it didn't look like the pictures he'd seen of Earth. There was smoke billowing into the air in places, and instead of the clean streets he expected, filled with cars and people going about their lives, everything was quiet. No people, no moving cars. Where he could see details, he noticed signs of damage, broken glass, crumpled metal, burn marks. I thought the invasion didn't reach Earth. And yet, as he continued to stare down at the scene unveiling around him, a sick, twisting feeling in his gut told him they'd missed something. Something important. Something vital. What the hell happened here? Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. That is episode 2 of Fated Mate to the Drakoan. And share in the comments below what you think will happen next. What did you think of this chapter? And If you like this video, consider subscribing and hitting the bell if you want notifications. There'll be cards on the screen for more videos to watch, and you can find additional ways to get in contact with me and engage with my content in the description of the video. Until next time, bye!